It gives me great pleasure today to be talking with John Connell, one of the most influential engineers of his generation and a founder of one of Aurecon's heritage companies, Connell Wagner. Through his vision and engineering excellence, John had a direct hand in shaping the cities and infrastructure of Australia in the post-Second World War period. He's a great inspiration to me, both as an engineer and as a mentor. During his career, John always remained a visionary. He sought out challenges and embraced new ways to deliver innovation and sustain growth. John took a world view at a time when many consulting practices were focusing on local issues and locally based solutions. His insights and experience are a fascinating example of what is possible. Thank you for giving us your time today, John. It's most appreciated. So John, the first question to you is, what do you think have been the biggest changes in our profession since the start of your career?
Well, if thinking about that, I think the biggest change is the change of the relationship between the engineering, consulting engineer anyway, and his client. The people that came in were the people who were managing, weren't they? And so you didn't get in contact with your client. And also, as I see now, it's, as I understand, you've got to be in conjunction with other people. That's been the big change. It's not. It was a very personal thing. It's not that now, as I see it. It's a very organised thing.
Okay, that's interesting. Next, who had the biggest impact on your life and your career, John?
Well, the biggest impact on me was a fellow named Cyril Hudspeth, and he applied for a junior draftsman, and I applied for it. You've got to remember that I'd just been married about 2 weeks or so, and the point was that I had made up my mind that I'd studied in my own time drafting and applied mechanics, and I was going to apply for anything. And my wife was agreed with me that wherever I could put myself in, I would do this, and I would accept whatever money there was. So I applied for the start of my career. I applied for a junior draftsman's job.
Okay.
And
you got the job. And you got the job?
I got the job. Not only that, he gave me a slight rise in salary. He didn't believe that I would. He thought I didn't believe I would go down, but I said I would. And he said he'd make me a draftsman temporarily and give me a little bit of extra money, which was very good. That's how it started.
That's fantastic. You've mentioned in the past, and I'll quote you here, that war taught you about innovation and improvisation. Are these qualities as important as they were back then in 1947?
I think they're more important than anything. I always keep saying that the war taught me so much. I'd come through the Depression, and this was a terrible time, and I don't want to go over that. But the point was that the war gave me that training, and it's full of humanities, and it was full of caring for the other man. And also I advanced in I became a qualified signaller, and therefore I was in charge of the signalling in the infantry battalion. But I went on further, and I liked the techniques of the army, which was happy, but I never ever dropped the idea of being an engineer, because I got into that just before the war. But we did have to care for each other. And I think I'm quite sure that engineering depends entirely on humanity. I think all engineers have to be full of humanity, and you can only get that where you get danger and you get risks, and you also get courage, and you've got to do this, but you've got to think of the other man.
John, as a practical engineer, you always stayed close to academia. Why was that?
Well, I always had the feeling for academia, And I must say that the Melbourne University were very helpful. And I think that engineers should keep close to the university. And many a time I was just tested by the Dean of the Faculty of Melbourne University, and he said, "You know more about this than me," and I said, "No, I don't. I want your view." And I was quite laughed at that time, but I think I was early. You really got to keep close to your university. That's where the new ideas come. And you will have noticed that in the running of the practice, I always made sure that 2 graduates were put on every year to make sure we kept up to date with what was going on. And I got criticised for that too.
Really? Oh. Well, I can tell you we still do that today. We still
You
put
do-
on
do-
5%
do you do
graduates
that
every year.
today?
Yeah, so we've kept your idea.
It's a great idea.
Oh, yes.
Because
yeah.
it keeps you in touch with the modern tendency.
Absolutely. John, you've built a great business, and that's why I'm here today. If I wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here interviewing you today.
Well, come on, you
No. But what gave you the most satisfaction in the business, in building that business?
Well, there was a lot of things. I think if you wanted just to say one thing would be very hard, because, you know, there's several good projects that I could talk about. But first and foremost was the fact that we were progressing and that I was able to provide employment for so many people and families. That, to me, that's the human side of it. And I thought that the great structural work was wonderful. I love that. And the 2 tall buildings in Collins Street, which is called Collins Place, was a wonderful thing. Yes. The Art Centre was a wonderful thing. And also the first diversity I made was the Southeastern Purification Plant, which was wonderful. And also, of course, you can't get away from the Melbourne Underground Rail loop.
Of course.
Really wonderful.
Yes. Oh, great.
But I enjoyed every part of engineering.
Yes. John, if you look back over the last 50 years in engineering, and I know you've kept up to date because we often talk on the phone, is there a single great innovation that you can think of, or several, but one in particular?
Well, I think as far as we are concerned, I suppose that's what you want to know, I think the diversification was the single great thing that made the practice. And that was, do you want to know how I did that?
Absolutely.
I made sure that when I started on my own that I had to borrow the money, by the way, to do it. I went around the world and picked up where I found the practicing engineers and talked to them. And the only people that didn't take it well were the Fox people. But they thought I was after work when I wasn't. And I just think that was the first time I went away, I was given the appointment with W.S. Atkins. Oh, yes. Yeah. I think the firm still goes.
They're still going? Yeah, W.S. Atkins.
And I knew Bill Atkins very well, though I'd never met him before. He was only a short man, but he was full of dynamics. And I was told that I was lucky if I got a half hour with him. And 2 hours later, I left him. But he was very keen to make sure that I diversified. And I ridiculed that idea, and I wasn't thinking of diversification then. But I said, I can't do this, Mr. Atkins. I said, I'm a structural engineer. He said, what the hell do you think I am? He said, I'm a structural engineer. Yes. And he was actually running big steel works. Now that put the idea into my head. And then I went over I was wanting to look at the freezing ground. I'd frozen some ground for the Border Works in a temporary way down on the flats. And this worked very well, but I went to the university in Toronto and in Canada, and I became very friendly with them on freezing. And so this made me alter, and I did alter. and I got the opportunity by being selected with Brown and Caldwell, who was a great people in San Francisco, to work with me on the southeastern purification plant. And this was a great event. And this gave us a diversification. And it's interesting to notice from that I became very friendly with Dr. Caldwell, and everyone told me I'd have a hard job with him because he was a hard man to work with, but we became very firm friends. And you'll find that Caldwell Connell Engineers came out of that, and we did the sewage plant at Canberra and a lovely sewage plant up at Darwin before we set the firm up. And I insisted on his name being first because it was sewage treatment, and that's what he was very good at. So Caldwell Connell Engineers was. He's not with us now. He's passed on, but that was a real innovation. I thought we changed entirely because I told the Waterworks who I was working with, and they gave us this job on a world basis.
Yes. John, just following on from that, my recollection as a much younger engineer then was that you really pioneered joint ventures. I don't think of many other Australian companies who went about it the way you did.
No, that's right. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that point up because I was criticised very. In fact, I was brought up before the Association of Consulting Engineers for misrepresenting myself. But I had nothing to do with the treatment, and I taught them a lesson. I did all the civil works, and I was very interested in the chemical works, but Brown and Caldwell were doing that, and that I was wonderful. But you were quite right. Everyone thought I was misrepresenting myself by taking sewage treatment plant.
I didn't think you misread. I thought it was very clever, but it was certainly the start of the concept of big joint ventures in Australia.
As a matter of fact, I must say this, that our practice really set the world going on all of this, around really with jobs overseas as well. Yeah.
John, you mentioned the MERLA, the Melbourne Underground Loop, so we should really just talk about that a little bit because as part of the whole joint venture thing, you spent 5 years preparing for that project. Could you tell us a little bit more about it? Even I remember it was John Connell, Mott, Hay, Anderson, Hatch, Jacobs, and everybody remembered it because it was such a wonderful project.
Yes, John, the first of all, I knew we were going to have a Melbourne Underground loop, and I spoke to the railway people about it, and they sort of laughed and said that, you're a structural man, you wouldn't know anything about tunnels, but I did. When I was a student, I helped one of the masters at RMIT, as it was then. I think it was the Institute of Melbourne Technological Institute, the Melbourne Technological Institute, and he was doing an exam, and I did some of the drawings, and I've always been interested in tunnels. I told them this, but they rather laughed at it. They said, you didn't have enough experience. So that meant that I had to get, if I was going to do the underground, I would have to get somehow some lessons in tunnelling. So I went round the world. It's not much good at getting on the phone or even writing to people. You've got to see you. So I went straight away to see Mott, Hay and Anderson. I knew they were doing all the building work, all the tunnelling work, I should say, in London. And they did agree that they think about it to work with me. And then I went over to, they said there's another firm in Canada, Hatch, and they'd worked with Hatch on the Yonge Street Underground in Toronto, and we got in the plane straight away, and I went over, and they decided they'd work with us too if this years come about, And then I knew that we needed somebody like Don Jacobs, who was a temporary man in tunnels, and I saw him, and yes, he would work. But I was 5 years going round these people and getting to know them, and then getting to know me was much important. It's very interesting, that system, because of all those people, I'm still friendly with those who are still alive.
Wow, wow.
We had a wonderful time. But you might say that I also made sure that I knew how to work with railway people, because I went to London, and when I was there several times, I went to see the top engineer in the London Underground, and he taught me so many things, showed me how they treated consultants, and the interesting thing, he put his thumb on the desk and screwed it in and said, I screw them down.
Well, nothing's changed,
Yeah,
John. Nothing's
but that's
changed.
what I was able to come back and tell them, in the railway people, how to run it. So I did
That's
more
wonderful.
than just getting the team together. I told them how to run it.
Wow. And of course, we still have a world-class tunnelling business, you'll be pleased to know. We've
Yes,
continued
I know
that
you
on.
do, yeah.
And
That's
we still
where
work.
it came from, didn't it?
Yes, and we still work with Hatch, and we still work with Motts, and we still work with Jacobs. So
Yeah.
all of those things have
Well,
lived
it's
on.
interesting, you know. I think we won the Melbourne Underground in worldwide competition. But I think the real thing was, I knew, and I'd done it before, that I'd been interested in tunnels through mountains, and we had the snowy mountain view, but it's different going through tunnels than going through mountains than it is going through a city. And we had nobody to do that. So that's why I went to Motto and Anderson. This was really remarkable. But the thing was, it was me who insisted upon having Jacobs with us. And I think that won us the commission, if you want my view, because he was skilled in temporary work. All over the world, he was a skilled temporary tunnel man. And he did all the temporary works for the tunnels in the Melbourne Loop.
Fantastic. So, John, do you have a standout project, if you look back, one favourite? We better take the Underground Loop out. Was there one other that really stood out as your favourite?
Well, it happens to be a big hospital in Hong Kong, which is the Sha Tin Hospital. It's bigger than Melbourne. That was a remarkable one, yeah. That required a lot of attention by me too.
Yeah, yeah. And why is it your favourite? What stands out in your
Well,
mind?
I think it was a favourite because we built it in water. Well, they showed me the site was a bay, and we had to de-water the bay, and then bring up this wonderful hospital. And the foundations were really big caissons. They were about a metre and a half in diameter and went down about 120 feet. And they were all done, and they won it in price against mechanical things, because there were floating boulders in the soil, and no machine could handle that. And the people who were doing it were Chinese people, but they all had to be families. The father really was doing the tunnelling, and as he went down, he lined the caisson, and he sent the earth up by a windlass and bucket, and they had to be a relative, because if they didn't do that properly, he would have been killed.
Wow. Okay. that keeps you very focused.
Yeah. It was really a very interesting project.
What year, John?
I can't think of the year. I don't know when it would be. It'd be about the 1970s, I suppose.
70s, yeah.
70s.
Wow. So, John, I understand that Aurecon, going way back to your days, was the first to hire women engineers. Is that correct?
Yes, I think I was the first to put women engineers on, because at that time I was on the faculty of the Melbourne University, and I knew that women were doing very well. But the men didn't like it. But I knew there was a lot of ladies coming on. And that I just recently, the first one I put on made herself known to me. She's not working with us now, but she's
oh, wow.
yeah. But I was first to do it, yes.
That's great. Thank you. And perhaps one last question, John. What was the most enjoyable thing, the most satisfying thing you did when you were at, I'll call it Aurecon now, when you were building Aurecon?
I think the satisfying thing was working with other people and being with other engineers. I think that the thing that engineering is, that no matter what you do, you can't live long enough to know all you can about engineering.
Oh, I agree with that.
And so that was what I had to do. And I'm to this very day, I'm still an engineer.
Yeah.
And I was a soldier too, but I was an engineer.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, John.